Mathematic 2014 webinar series, Teaching Math Study Skills in Classroom and Emporium Model Courses with Dr. Paul Nolting. And this presentation is sponsored by the Developmental Mathematics Committee of AMATIC. And AMATIC is the American Mathematical Association of two-year colleges, and our core value is building expertise and exhibiting leadership in the teaching and learning of mathematics, enhancing personal growth, and improving teaching methods and effectiveness as a personally initiated lifelong responsibility. And for more information, please visit our website at amatic.org. And please note that the views expressed by the presenter are not necessarily the views of AMATIC, and any commercial products mentioned by the presenters are not endorsed by AMATIC. And now we're going to switch to Dr. Nolting's slides here, so let me bring those up for you. And I say that Dr. Nolting is presented at several AMATIC conferences in the past and has been part of the Developmental Math Summit and has worked on AMATIC Crossroads, and so I'm sure that you are in for a real treat today with this presentation, and so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Nolting right now.
Thanks, John, for all the information and also for setting this up, and thank AMATIC, especially the developmental education part of it, for helping us become more successful in mathematics. As some of you know, there's a big movement for redesign that was going on for quite a few years. Last couple of years has really hit a pinnacle, and I'm working with several states on helping them decide how best redesign their math courses. As you know, some of you have been told how to redesign it, which I don't believe is appropriate, but of course sometimes the states tell us what to do, and sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does. Some of us are looking at it from a design of how to make more students become successful in mathematics, and looking at the StatWay, QuantWay, and MathWay process. So again, thank you. I've been looking at all the questions, some of the statements. Looks like we have everybody from around the country, including Alaska, which one of these days I'll get to. Living in Florida is hard to get there. But what I'm going to do is talk about how we've become more successful in mathematics in general. Then we're going to get into study skills. At first, which if you want, you can go download the Math Study Skills handout I have, the AMATIC webinar handout, because it has some information on there you could be using. Eventually, we're going to talk about the Math Study Skills evaluation, and when we get to that, what John's going to do is pretty much click into that for me. He's also going to keep track of questions, and as I've done these many times before, I'm pretty sure I'll be sending some emails out answering more questions in detail. So don't hesitate to say some things. Don't hesitate to get an idea. I'm actually recognizing some of the colleges I've worked with, and actually some of the people too. But anyway, this is a good deal for everybody. And I'm just surprised I had so many people on a Monday afternoon, especially summertime. Anyway, we'll get started. What we're going to look at first is the variables contributing to math success. If you heard me present, I always do this. Next is the National Math Summit we talked about earlier on developmental ed. And it's pretty much on all different areas of math. Research and integrating math study skills in different courses in different areas. I already had one question up, said they tried a math study skills course and it didn't work out that well. I'll talk about how you can make those successful. And what we're doing too is picking the right people. And I'll talk about who we can already predict who's going to have trouble in math without any type of early alert system. Then we're going to get right into some strategies and techniques for study skills. Then some actually student study strategies themselves, integrate into the classroom, how do you reinforce people for doing this, and actually how do you make them better learners. The first I'm going to get into the variable chart, and bear with me if you've seen this, I always do it because it gives you a big profile of what's going on. If you're in my elementary algebra class right now, we can probably predict your success. And And what we're looking at is the 50% of the variance of the grade is cognitive entry skills and IQ. That's basically your math history, how fast you learn math, if you have any type of disabilities affecting your learning or input of math. It is very important. Some states are thinking this is not important. I'm actually from Florida, and the new rule now, which is pretty bizarre, is if you graduate from high school in 2003 or above, that our previous Governor Jeb Bush indicated that after 2003, in 10 years, everybody's going to be ready for college, right out of high school. So what happens is they don't have to take a placement test. They can go right into the first credit level of math for us. That's intermediate algebra or English or reading. We're going to see how that's going to work. I predict there's some issues there because I know based on the variance here, if 50% of your grades based on what you know and you forgot it, we have some issues. The other part is quality of instruction. That's about 25%. That gets into tutor training. Of course, if you heard me say this several times, I'll say it again. Untrained tutors are just as good as no tutors. And a lot of that research is out of Appalachian State with Hunter Boylan several years ago. Learning styles are still important, but the importance of learning styles now is more into how to make the students be more successful with their learning style, because we get a lot of students that are hands-on, kinesthetic, auditory learners that are being placed in emporium models, sometimes not by design of the institution, but design of the state. When we get into instructional online information, that's getting very important. I was interviewed by U.S. News and World Report, I think about a month ago, about online classes, and all the colleges I've worked with, on an average, all the online math courses have lower pass rates than the classroom courses. However, I have people who teach online courses, like my friend Fitzroy Farguson at Valencia, who has a higher rate than the average classroom. So they did interview me about that. I did talk about the success of that area. As I talk about these, I'm going to be giving you the link. And I think the link is actually in the handout, but they did put in is what I suggested they do. They just put in, I said it doesn't work, and that's not totally true. So anyway, then we get into the study skills area, the self-concept, the locus of control, the anxiety, the study habits, and this is what we're really focusing on now. When we start looking at the National Math Summit, 4 out of the 6 panelists said that one of the main things we have to do is to focus on making our students better learners so they can adapt to the type of curriculum we have. And also, I'm working with states like in Colorado where in some cases you can't even take a math class unless you score, I think it was 30 on the compass. And what are we going to do with those students? So it's getting pretty interesting. What we're finding out is that if we make the student a better learner across the board, so to speak, that's going to help them no matter what. Jim and I were talking about Michigan, where they're going to go to a pre-algebra. They may get rid of some of the arithmetic classes, which means if you jump them up to a pre-algebra class, you got to go back and retest them on those skills to make them successful, or at least to give them some type of diagnosis to help them out. But again, the study skills is going to work for that. And one of the biggest things I'm going to emphasize now is that our developmental students need what we call My Math Success Plan. That is actually a physical, written down plan of what they're going to do to be successful in math. I also do it with students I work with disabilities and some of my vets. And this is it. It's a total picture. You know, how do we place them right? How do we give good quality of instruction based on their styles and based on what we have to do? And then how do we make them better learners? Here's some results of research from years ago, and some of it's very current, I should say. The 1-hour math study skills course I did a long time ago. That was actually part of my dissertation. And I had a lot of students, like 200 of them. And what we did is we marketed it to students repeating math. This was with all math repeaters. And I worked with the advisor office. I worked with the registrar's office, who actually had records on these students who were coming in from previous repeats and failures. Worked with the math department. And what we did, and this is for that one person that asked, how did it work, you know, with the math study skills course? It actually was a 1-hour course. I completed it by midterm with the students. And we marketed it to the fact that we're going to help you become better learners. I also marketed that I'm not going to do much math in there, and which I didn't. I basically teach you how to learn math, how to reduce your anxiety and become more successful. And what we found out is if marketing it that way, especially when the instructors emphasized it and the advisors emphasized it, we had too many people coming in. And I actually had to have what we call a waiting list control because I ran it again the next semester for those students. But the research is clear. At 0.05 level, I basically had a higher pass rate. Now, speaking of research and kind of backtracking a little bit, here's your good questions you should be asking yourself. That is, and this could be a question you can put yes or no on this program here. The more times you take an algebra class, the less chance you have to pass it. Is that true or false? Let me repeat that. The more times you take an algebra class, do you have the less chance to pass it? Now think about that for a couple seconds. The answer is yes. Every place I've been, students are repeating, do worse. Normally it's 50% the first time they take the math class, 33% the second time, then 25% the third time. And after that, we can't find them. They're gone. So what we're looking at is that type of research you should be doing at your own institution. Research is power. Also, research gets you money. Because a lot of times we did research at different institutions, and I got the math labs, learning resource centers, and the math departments more money and more training. And it wasn't that they weren't doing a good job, it's that they realized that math basically is the course that most students had difficulty with. And if you work with any type of students and there's a problem in their life, the first thing they do is drop math. We know that. The next thing is on research is C's. And I did this with a QEP plan at one of the colleges in Florida, which I can't name because they told me not to. But the idea was how do we become more successful in Math 1033, which is our intermediate algebra. And I said we got to go look at our elementary algebra. And the president said, I don't know. And I said, we got to find that out. So we did it. And what we found out is that 85% of the students who made a C in elementary algebra failed intermediate. I mean, that was surprising to me even. And that's more research showing that students are repeating. We need somebody immediately. Then I worked with Miami-Dade College many years ago. And another research tip was this, what happens if you stay out of math for a semester or a year? Well, Dave found out that 10% less pass rate if you stayed out over a year. In other words, from around 43% to around 33% or something like that. So this research, I'm emphasizing, you should be doing it at your own school. Okay, back to the research on the slide. Worked with another college. I can't really tell these colleges because they asked me not to, but this was LSCC. We came in there and helped them with math study skills. They went from a 37 to 57% pass rate. Backing up to the research article, this is recent out of Journal of Developmental Ed, Readiness, Behavior, and Foundations of Math. They indicated that the best predictor of math success is the placement test, which has been that for years. The second is study behaviors, math study behaviors. So if you start looking at those two resources, another college I worked with, this was an Emporia Model College, BCF, and they actually had a 23% pass rate. We came in and taught some math study skills, got into more pullouts, some classroom instruction. They got up to about 60% pass rate. This last one here, they implemented the math study skills course, Lewis, in 2014. He actually just did his master's thesis on that one, where we actually had a math study skills course with basically the study skills course and significantly improved the success rate of the students in the math course as long as they made a B or higher in the math study skills course. Otherwise, they learned the content. And again, with the National Math Summit, what we found out in that area is that a lot of people are focusing now on making the students better learners. As you know, the Dana Center with Yuri Treisman and Amy Getz are already advocating a math study skills light course. They can't call it that in Texas. It's more of an educational course or a behavioral psych course, but basically they're advocating that you have that course with it. Some of the colleges I worked with in the past We mandated it, especially if you're a repeater, that you have a study skills course in math along with that. That's just good research. Here's more research that I worked with college a long time ago. Basically, baseline here, implemented math study skills, 1 hour credit course for everybody required. Went on for a while, and then what happened was that the new president decided they don't want to do that anymore, so it dropped down. Then we had a female president come in and say, no, we need that math study skills. In fact, she was actually math phobic, she told me, when I was doing workshops with her, which I didn't ask any questions about. But anyway, she supported us. We went back and implemented more math study skills in courses, especially through some of our success classes, went up. She left. Then another president came down and didn't want to do it. This is great baseline data, bad for the student, because you get the baseline here, treatment, no treatment, treatment, no treatment. Wow, that's unreal. Here's another one. We presented this one in Matic about 3 years ago with repeaters. We said we got to do something with repeaters. And if you're out there listening to me now and talking to you in groups, is what do you do with your repeaters? Because we figured out if we took the repeaters out of the data, we could go from a 50% to almost a 75% pass rate immediately, which means we got to treat them differently and help them with more. This course here was a pre-algebra course. We used manipulatives and a pilot through my Title III program, 48% pass rate, which is not the best, and that disappointed me. For non-students in the pilot, it was 33. But I also found out if they scored below a 30 on the Accuplacer score, they basically had a 75% failure rate. Yeah, you heard me right. No matter what we did, they had a 75% failure rate. If they scored above a 30, they had a 75% pass rate, about that. And you can see how this kind of averaged out. We also concluded those students below 30, our curriculum in the pre-algebra class was too high for them. Basic algebra repeaters again with study skills, some manipulatives. We're getting up to 67% compared to 33%. Intermediate algebra, 7% compared to 40%. And you probably figured out the trend. Interesting, the higher we went up, the higher the pass rates. And these were like learning communities. They actually went together. However, it's the same instructor who started in the pre-algebra with 25 to 30 students, actually had the same students the following semester and the next semester. So this is getting on research. Now let's talk about how do you implement the skills, and then I'm going to get into actually the skills themselves. What we're looking at basically is how do we get math study skills into the curriculum. When I talk to people across the country, there's really no debate that's going to help them. It's just how do we get it in, and then how do we work. I do have a debate, though, with some students on general study skills, and we've done research on general study skills, and it's great for everything but math, chemistry, and physics, great for history, sociology, English, but we found out that it didn't really help them in math. Once I did some of my math study skills training with 1 hour course and actually put it into the classroom, we found out that they actually helped the math course along with the English and history and sociology course. So the math study skills go both ways, so to speak. The general study skills don't. If you're into different designs, like the classroom design now that could be condensed, what we're looking at in a classroom, integrated into the classroom, it's basically assigned chapters. In my text, they're learning math. And the reason I'm using this as an example, because the text is the only text I know that has research that says that learning these skills will improve students' math success. A lot of the other study skills texts out there, even math study skills, I haven't seen the research backing it up. I get research a lot, but anyway. And what you end up doing is you integrate it into the 15 or 20 minutes part of the first class. And here's the key of almost all of these. You got to be done at midterm. I have people who ran this the whole semester and it didn't work. Well, no, because it's like you need a treatment up front. By midterm, if you're failing in math, you're pretty well gone. So, in fact, I did that. When I first ran this before I did my dissertation, I ran it 16 weeks like a good guy. It didn't work. My students said, hey, why are you teaching me how to take the math test when we're at the final? I needed that, on the first or second test. So I learned real quick from them. But basically, the condensed classroom, you got to practice, you got to discuss the strategies, then you got to practice them in the course. And later on, we're going to talk about practice. One of my best ones is teaching them a quick technique to review their notes before doing their homework, or a quick technique to review the textbook before assigning homework problems and have them do that technique and then do the homework problems. There are other things we can do too. So this one is actually in the math class. I've had more success with this one than most of the other models due to the fact that we keep them active and it's applicable right then and there. And pouring model. This is what's coming up, and I worked with several colleges on this, including one right now where I wrote a design for them. What we're looking here is during the pouring model, a lot of students think they just don't need help or they can't ask for help. And with the pouring model, what I'm asking a lot of students is, what are you bringing out of there? What do you leave? After you're doing your online homework, what do you take away? And this is the real question. What do they take away? After I watched hundreds of them, most of them take away nothing. And I tell them, that's probably what you learn, nothing. Because what's happening, they're processing it in short-term memory, a little bit of working memory, and they get enough help buttons, and they do well. So in this area, what we're talking about is assigning students to read the chapters, and then a short discussion about what we want to talk about. If we're talking about, like the first one, it's going to be on why you have to take math. You can have a brief discussion on that, and then start talking about what we can do, and then actually have them practice some of the strategies in the lab. So I don't believe that we should have them sit at the computer all the time. We have to have some interaction. In fact, I did research back on this in academic systems. If you know about academic systems, then you're probably old as I am. There should be a laugh out there somewhere. And we found out that that system only worked when we had pullouts, et cetera, et cetera. This is gone now, so I can talk about it. Web-based models, again, we have a survey on basically, are you ready for online? And if you're not, how can we help you? Chat rooms, study skills assignments, and doing that. So the idea here is, how do you integrate it in here? And the other one is the Math Study Skills course, which is a whole curriculum. If you want that, I'll see my curriculum design. Let's move on. Guidelines for integrating study skills. Here's the key emphasis I'm going to say. Whatever you want to make them to learn, you have to make them do it in front of you. So if you want to teach them some relaxation techniques, you have them practice the relaxation techniques right there. You don't have to be psychotherapists or psychologists. There's some techniques I'm going to show you in a few minutes. If you want them to learn how to do online homework with a note-taking system I just devised in my new book, we got to have them practice it. And the practice may be only 5 or 10 minutes, because that gets them into the behavior of doing it. And then we have to ask, reward them. I do believe in rewarding them. I do believe in giving them points for practicing these new techniques. I do believe in giving them some points for homework and developmental, especially if they do it a certain way. Because we got to get them to change the behavior patterns. And what we're trying to do here is have them do it inside the classroom, then require them to practice it outside the classroom, and then come back and discuss it and talk about it. Instructor Resources. A lot of times when we work with instructors, they go, well, what can I do? Well, we have PowerPoints, or you can make your own up, teacher manuals. This Math Study Skills evaluation I'm going to get into immediately. This is the key. This is a real successful tool. And on the students, we help them with all type of surveys to get them to understand themselves better, and also memory techniques, memory strategies, math success websites, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here we go. When we start looking at content, what do you want to teach them? I really want you to understand that they need to understand how learning math is different and understand how it pays off. Then the assessment part is no math assessments. When we get to the Math Study Skills, I got to tell them 3 times, there's no math on it, there's no math. Guess what? There's no math. Because as soon as I say there's math on it, they don't want to take it. Anxiety issues. We got to deal with that up front. Creating a positive study environment. We got to teach them how to do that. Where's the study environment now? It's anywhere. It's everywhere. Anywhere they can get on their cell phone, their smartphone, their computer. The library, yeah, that's neat, but people go there. It's in, Starbucks studying. I mean, that's it. That's what we're having now. Understand the memory process. I'm going to have them understand that, because I want to know where their memory is sufficient in the process and where it's breaking down. Once we figure out where it's breaking down, we can work with them. Note-taking and listening systems. This is classroom and online. It's essential. Homework and reading, classroom online. Test taking, classroom online. Wow, online testing. That gets really interesting because sometimes you can't go back. So my techniques are turned out to be differently. Motivating yourself, and again, my math success plan. That, I'm going to keep harping on that and what that is. How do we develop a plan? I'm just going to go through this briefly. I do have what I call my bitch and moan session every time we get into these classes, and I suggest you do the same thing. Have them talk about it, have them talk about math. I just tell them you can't use any cuss words. You know, you can say math is awful. You know, I just listen to them now. I used to be the Apostle Paul of math and preach math. That didn't work. I just listened to them. And they talk about it. Then I talk about math being like a sport. You got to practice. Math basically is a learning strategy and technique. And then at the end of it, I say, how much money you want to make? I actually ask them, how much money you want to make when you graduate here? And that stops them dead in their tracks. And usually I get the guy or the lady who says, I want to make $150,000 a year. And I tell them legally, and they all kind of laugh. And then what we actually do is they tell me they want to make $80,000 a year. And I will send this out in the email. I actually have a graph now that looks at math, classes, and the amount of money you take. And if you're going to make $80,000 a year legally, you're taking up to calc 2 differential equations. You're going to be a computer engineer, computer science. You're going to get into engineering areas, maybe up-level business areas. And what that usually does for them is they're going, oh, wait a minute, the more math I take, the more money I make. I go, that's what it is. Well, I don't want to take that much math. I go, okay, you won't make that much money. And that really cuts down the debate about math. And they go, why do you have to take it? I'll never use it. And sometimes I said, yeah, you got to take it. It's a graduation requirement. Ever use it? Maybe not. I don't know. But how much money you want to make? So you get the point. So you get the point of this whole first area is having them be able to talk to you. And what I found out is a couple of them came up to me afterwards and said, Dr. Nolting, thank you for letting me vent, get it off my chest. I'll now come talk to you. Otherwise, I wouldn't. Otherwise, I made it safe for them. Okay? The math study skills evaluation, learning modalities, all this helps the students become better learners. We do assessments with them. Really not math assessments, and it pretty much gets into online. Now what we're going to do, John, we're going to switch right to the math study skills evaluation, if you could. And if you have it on your website, you can go ahead and pull it up if you want. And here's the idea about the math study skills evaluation. When we give this to students, I actually tell them that there's no math on it, and I just want to know how you learn math. I'm not going to be interested in if you can do calculus, or you can do arithmetic. I just want to know how you learn math. And be honest. Normally when I used to ask them what I call the 20 questions, for example, they came to me after failing the first test. And here's how it went. Well, you didn't do well on the first test, John. And they go, yeah, I know. I said, well, how much did you study? Do you actually have a book? I didn't see you in class that much. Did you actually read the book? Did you do that online homework? I didn't see it that much. Did you panic on the test? What's your math history? I became the interrogating attorney, basically arguing with them automatically and blaming them. A lot of them, after about the third or fourth question, told me they just shut me out. Now I'll let the survey do this. And with the survey, it basically asks them the questions we just talked about. When we get the results back, and this person here scored a 60. That is great. They failed. And I tell them this. In fact, I do a lot of this in my classroom, and I actually will talk to them and go, look, most of you in the class here failed the math study skills evaluation. Hey, that is great, man. You should have made a 30. That would have been better. And they all look at me like you're probably looking at me, but you can't see me, of course. Going, what is this guy talking about? Failing this is good? I go, you betcha failing this. Failing the math test is not good. Failing this is great. Look at this. Based on your score here, you got a 63 in study effectively. You weren't good in that, so you can actually go into one of the math chapters and read this if you want. You got a 62 in memory learning. You got a 58 in reading, 57 in classroom. You're pretty well low across the board. And guess what? Have you ever been taught how to study? Have you ever been taught how to study math? And the answer is no, no. Well, Well, if we didn't teach you how to study math and you have poor math study skills, it's like a coach blaming you for not making that play, but you never went to practice. And then I get right into the questions. So study math every school day. This person response 1. We tell them what to do. I get into when learning math is best. I get into the, I'll forward real quick, when you studied math before, what distractions you have, your anxiety issues, actually pages you can read in the book right now to get help. I don't wait. I tell them, look, if you have trouble with anxiety, let's deal with it now. If you have trouble with note-taking, let's deal with it now. There's some more here. Memory techniques, if you have trouble with that, let's deal with it now. You can go and get this help now. We don't have to wait. If you go into this other area here in math lectures and things, you can get that. Looks like I missed that one. The yellow mark basically is what I should have taken out. Getting down to the end, do you really review what you read? What type of homework system do you have? But I've also found out they're more honest with this one if they talk to me. And then we can say, okay, let's look at the last part of this one. I'm always procrastinating and learn math by putting off homework. Yep, that's true, you do. And do you ever blame the instructor? Yep, they blame me. So the idea here is we can look at this and point this out as their major problem. And John, we can switch back to the PowerPoint slides now, because if they can pinpoint that this is the major problem they have, that gives them hope. Hope leads to new behavior patterns. New behavior patterns leads to better success and better grades. If I tell them, nope, you don't have the math gene, might as well give up now, they're done. That gets what we call learned helplessness. This actually helps them understand that, oh, if I became a better learner, it will help me more become successful in math. Now, how do I do that? And a lot of times, this is what I do to get them in the classes, too. We can talk about these surveys. We have it basically set up, and actually in the handout, you have it. I'll give it to you for free. You got it. This, for you or student use, just don't put it on your website, okay? But you got that. Anxiety issues. Here we go. How to reduce anxiety techniques and procedures. Anxiety is associated with a lot of different aspects of learning. So much that I used to ask students, when do they have most of their test anxiety? When did you develop test anxiety? And this is a question you can ask your group. Is it high school, middle school, elementary school? High school, middle school, elementary school. I thought it was high school. I was totally wrong. It's elementary school. And actually it's in 3rd or 4th grade. So they have the anxiety forever. So when you start looking at anxiety issues and start working with students, you can talk about that. You may not believe test anxiety is real, but it is for them. So if you don't believe in it, just pretend like you do, because the strategies will still work. We get in techniques. Now, if you're actually in my workshop right now, in fact, you can actually do this. How to reduce your anxiety? Tensing, relaxing. So if you're there, put your hands underneath a chair, push your feet down on the floor, just push hard and tense up for 5 seconds. You ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let go. That's called tensing and relaxing. I have them do that in the classroom. I also have them do that before the test if they want. But practicing in the classroom works really well because I break it up. If they're in the Emporium model, I do the same thing. Okay, relaxation time, everybody tense, relax. You know, some of them do it, some of them don't, but I also get them off the mind of math a little bit. Other one, the visual imagery technique is perfect. Have them imagine their happy place. Have them imagine where they are. This is actually a place my wife and I went on vacation several years ago in Spanish Wells. I don't think anybody knows where that is. It's the northern part of the Bahamas. It was called Spanish Wells because the Spaniards came to this island because it was the last island that had well of fresh water before they returned the gold back to Spain. Okay, but again, have them visualize. I have this girl here putting her hands across her face, kind of blocking out the light. And it's like like a minute or so, you know. Just close your eyes, find a place where you're going to be happy. Don't ask them where it is, because I've asked a few people where their happy place is, and it gets kind of risque. I can't say it because we're being recorded, but in my workshops, I tell you exactly what they said. It was interesting. It's Freudian, put it that way. So the idea is have them relax in the classroom, have them tense and relax themselves, and move on. Then there's cognitive positive statements. have them say, what are you going to tell yourself during the test? What are you going to say? What are you going to do? What are you going to think? I have them repeat them down, write them down, and tell themselves before they even take the test. So that is a good technique for test anxiety. You got to practice that. A lot of them like it. It works really well. Listening and note-taking skills. The whole thing here is math is a foreign language, and here's the trick. They need a glossary. They need a vocabulary. And if you get really good, you put vocabulary words on the test to make sure they learn the vocabulary words. You know, what is a polynomial? What is a binomial? What's a trinomial? What's the difference? Have them write that down. Listening techniques. Where's the best place to listen in the classroom? Called the golden triangle of success. The base is up near the instructor, and the apex is in the back of the room. We found that through research. It works really well. When we start looking at note-taking procedures, here's the one that works. I guarantee it. And you as an instructor can actually do this on the board. I've worked with many instructors that we actually mimic at this on the board. What we're looking at here is the examples right here, problems and steps, right in the middle. Now, I don't do this until like the second or third week of class. Then we have explanations over here. Why can I do this? What are the steps? What should I ask myself? Think this into metacognitive learning. Over here are key rules, keywords, rules, properties. And you can actually cover up this here, and it says monomial, binomial, and trinomial. The students can repeat what it is. Very good learning strategy and technique. Very good. But most of the times what we see is this information here, and we see nothing else. All we see is information, and then they go back and try to read it. Now, you can modify this in the homework. And I encourage people, because almost all the homeworks have help buttons, information buttons, and resources. So actually, while they're doing a different homework problem online, Emporium model, or as homework in the math lab, they should still have this. My rule of thumb is if you go through it and get it right the first time, don't worry about it. If you miss it the first time, or if you can't get it with the help buttons, you better write down that information in here. Write what the help buttons say over here, write what some of the key words are over here, and use it as an index. I've worked with several students who basically had either no notes from doing online homework or 20 pages. Both are bad, because a 20-page person never even reviewed them. I showed them how to review them and put them in this model. The other people, when they walked out, they said they knew it. Of course, you got to remember what we say to them sometimes. You do your homework, you should be successful in math. I don't say that anymore due to the fact that I have students who do 20 hours of homework and they still fail. Some of it's disability issues. Some of it is they're good at short-term memory, and when they get to the test, there's no help button, and they don't realize that. What we did is we actually practiced those skills, practiced those strategies before taking the test. And a lot of times when they walk out with nothing, they have nothing to practice. And here's another idea about it. You know, the 3-column method, 7 steps in note-taking. I would do this in the classroom for a while with all the steps. Then I'll knock out the discussion steps. Then I'll knock out the key idea steps. But I keep the other one up. I have students do pair share with this to see what the notes they have or not. It's great. It's a great system. Along with the Emporium model, you can do that. You can actually have them share what it is. This is what we call the scaffolding method, what we've been talking about. How do you set it up? How you work it? Because when I work with students, I usually get 3 complaints. One is I have a lot of anxiety, which probably is the easiest one to fix. I can teach them relaxation techniques, short-term, long-term. It works. I had trouble with the math tests. I can teach you some math test techniques, which I'll show you in a few minutes. Okay? And I understood it why I was doing it on homework, or I understood it why I was in the classroom. When I went home to do my homework, I couldn't do it. When I went home to do online homework, I couldn't do it. That's note-taking. That's just it. You got to have notes to remember yourselves. Now, something a little more radical about note-taking. Everybody probably in the room has a smartphone, right? Hey, what I'm doing now in the classes, as part of tutorial training, I'm telling them it's picture time. This is the problem you're going to miss. We all know the problems they're going to miss. So I tell them, I stop, I say, okay, get out your cell phones, take the picture. When I'm doing tutor training, and I tell my tutors that this is going to be a problem, such as dividing polynomials, have them video recorded. I actually have them video record me with my permission in the classroom. They actually do that. Take the pictures, put it in their notes. Somebody puts it on their Facebook page and let people go to it. This is technology today. Because what's happening, they're having poor short-term memory and they can't remember it. The cell phone is it. Now, when we come to test time, that's something else. We're not going to let them use that. Okay? I'm going to go through a couple more things. Learning from textbooks. Wow, that is interesting. I don't know if they do that anymore. All the students I've worked with so far with the online homework don't even know there's a textbook there a lot of times. They just go ahead and just start doing the homework. And we got my tutors trained to walk around going, what are you doing? You're stuck. We show you the resources. But we do know that reading the textbook ahead of time, or at least when I tell them they get stuck in the homework, they should go look at that area or the videotape on it. Reading strategies, I'm not going to get into these, but there are some from online textbooks and regular textbooks. The whole idea is, do you want to do that or not? We can move ahead a little faster here. Homework systems. You got to have a homework system, especially for online or for classroom. And one of the steps basically is make sure you end by being successful, and that usually happens with online. Classroom homework, sometimes it doesn't, and I tell them, let's do the problem. Again, go back to earlier problems. But the whole idea of the homework strategies and success is that before you even start, you should be reviewing your notes, reviewing the videos, reviewing something to get you going. That's a good system there. And as we do in the classrooms, we actually will practice that. I'll actually have them do a homework system, a short version of it, before they're doing their homework. In the Empowering model, we're going to train them how to do the homework. Isn't that radical? We're actually going to train them how to learn. I'm being facetious, as you know. We all know that's important. We've got to take the time out. I know I have students complain, I don't have time to do the homework because you're using this time up in the Empowering model. My response is that most of your learning, and this is something else you all know, is outside the classroom. I mean, we teach them how to do it in the Empowering model. We teach them how to do it in the classroom, but real learning is outside when they go home and practice. And that's why math studies skills are important. Let me just go to a couple more slides and we'll take some questions. This is just reviewing information. The idea is get into long-term memory. That's why I talk about long-term memory a lot. And having the students understand the stages of memory. Preparing for tests. Here we go. You know, how do you get them to go? Here's my another hint to do. We actually make up group cheat sheets in class. Or in the Empowering model, I have them do a pair share with somebody. Make up a cheat sheet. I didn't say they can use it on the test, but they really like this assignment. In fact, what I find out is about 33% of the students make up cheat sheets all the time in high school and even in college. And of course, I'm thinking that's why you're taking developmental ed, but I don't say that out loud to them. But that is a great technique. What do you got to do to make up a cheat sheet? You got to figure out what you don't know. Got that? That's metacognitive learning. Then you got to figure out how to write it down. And then you got to write it down. Of course, most of you have already figured this one out. By the time you write it down, you basically are starting to learn it. So with the 10 steps of test taking, that first one is memory data dump. And that's the one I want them to do as soon as they walk in the testing room, as soon as they walk in the classroom. I have them show a blank piece of paper and write it all down. Then they preview the test, and they mark on which one is the most important ones that I can get in the least amount of time. It's a video game, I tell them. Look, if you can do it in 30 seconds, that's the one you want to do. If you can do a problem in 3 minutes, don't do that one yet. Wait. We want all the cheap ones up front, as I call it. Get your points now. And then second memory data dump, test progress schedule, answer easy questions. You've seen a lot of these. Get down to this one, guess the remaining questions. Of course, my joke is this. What's the probability of guessing a math question correct? If it's not multiple choice? Anybody got the answer? You're right. It's 1 over infinity. That's a joke. But the idea here is I tell them, if you leave it blank, do me a favor, put -0, save me some time. And you go, well, I don't want to do that, so well, then put something down. I actually have them rewrite the problem sometimes. Rewriting the problem really helps because that's kinesthetic. They get it down and they put something down. And I tell them, look, if I'm grading that test paper at 3 o'clock in the morning, I see some stuff down, I may give you 2 points. You know, just move on. And then use all the test time. Most students don't use their test time due to anxiety, and here's the one you got to really talk to them about. Students getting up and leaving the room. Even in the testing situation with employee models, students getting up and leaving the room, tell them that those people do fail. They think they all make A's. They go, no. They fail too. They make good grades and they fail. So don't be anxious. Stay there to the end. Math is the best test to take, in my opinion, because you can check your answer and know if you got it right or wrong, or redo the problem and know you got it right or wrong, or at least check it. And then we get in the last part, which I'll do in 1 minute, and then we'll take some questions. Getting the test back. You got to give them the test back. I do this with tutors. I do this in classes. I was at St. Pete College many years ago. We did 300 people at one time. Test analysis. You got to give them the results. We get the test back. Misread direction errors. How many points did you miss? Careless errors. You dropped the sign. How many points did you miss? Concept errors will kill you every time. If you don't have good idea of what your concept error is, you're doomed to make them again in the next test. What are they? Application errors. These are word problems and graphing. I have some people who just can't do word problems, and they can actually still pass the class. They better be good at everything else. Test procedure errors, how to take the test. My pet peeve on this one is two. One, I spent 20 minutes on the problem, I got it right and failed the test. That's an ego issue. The other one is reviewing. Most people review from the first problem down. However, if you look at a lot of people, most of the mistakes in the last part of the test. So review backwards. And then study areas are cramming or not studying the right material, or in employee models, basically it's going to be, I learned it on the classroom, or I learned it actually during the homework. I did not practice it and never got into long-term memory or abstract reason to recall the test. That's what I tell them. So what I'm going to do now, John, is to take some questions. And here's more of the motivational aspects here. It is how to complete my math success plan. I'll send some people a plan. It's basically, what's your class? Look at the math study skills evaluation. What study skills do you need? When are you going to go to the lab? Who are you going to go see? What do you commit time-wise to do this? And once we get a plan, we got it. You can share it with your vet coordinator. You can share it with the disability coordinator, your math instructor. We can look at it. So, John, I know there's a bunch of questions. I've been seeing them flashing up. And go ahead and start answering or asking me some of them. And we'll see what we can do.
Well, does anyone have any questions for Dr. Nolting? If so, please put them in the chat room right now. Most of the questions, I think, were about the sound and the recording at this point, but a couple of people asked about where they can get your book.
Well, I can send that to them. If they want to email me, and I think my email's up in the front, pnolting@aol.com. I think it's up in the front slides if I go back. Yeah, that one. Because I usually, when I do webinars, I don't talk about that because I'm more for Matic and helping people out. You just email me that and we'll do it. And it does work quite well. I got a new edition out. But the thing, I want to talk a little bit about the 1-hour study skills class. We've done those, 8 weeks. You have to have an audience. If you just put it in the schedule, most people don't want to take it because they think it's another math class. If you put it in as study skill strategies and techniques and get people such as your veterans, your Students with Disabilities Office, the advisors to buy into it, they will load your class up. I mean, it's no doubt. And it will become successful. Like I said, students who've taken that class along with math. Also, I've actually had people use the math study skills in freshman seminar courses, in study skill classes themselves. And what we've looked at is the math success. If they had math study skills in a freshman seminar, it significantly improved the math success in the developmental and intermediate and college algebra classes. So that's just how it goes. I think your interest, as far as the group out there, is you're probably convinced that math study skills are going to improve success. As we go into math redesigns, some of our instructional strategies that we used were very effective may not be there anymore. So what are we going to compensate with? The idea is we can compensate with making students better learners. And basically that's what we have to do. The question is, how can you, as in the math department, and I'm pretty sure people out there who aren't in the math department, can team up with the advisors and do your own math summit. That's what I call it, your own math summit at the school. Get the advisors in, get the testing people in, and get the psychologists in from social sciences. And how do you make up a team? And how do you offer what we call a treatment of math study skills? And also, how do you work with students with disabilities? Another thing we do too is staffing. Now this is interesting. If you're working at a Learning Assistance Center, I know some of you know that. You have these people coming all the time. They camp out. They live there. I mean, they follow you to the bathroom. They want everything out of that lab. And they're also with Disability Services, or also with the veterans, or also repeating the course for the 5th time. We got to bring a team together and figure out how to help these people. You know, is it they can't do the math? Is it we don't give them the resources? And I've had both instances here. I had it where the person was what we call a flatliner. They had 3rd grade math, 3rd grade English, and 3rd grade reading, and they're in the course in the college because their parents wanted them in there. Well, after a while, we figured that out and got them off to a tech school doing something else. I have other students who have a 3.5, 3.9 GPA and can't pass math, and all they need is to graduate. Most of those students have some type of disability, which we can really help. Begin with Disability Services, give them the right accommodations, almost all of those people become successful. And what I've started doing with a lot of students, with disabilities or not, I started jumping classes. This is the Statway. I am a proponent of Statway. I've taken people who have failed elementary algebra and basically put them in stats or liberal arts or topics, and they were just as anybody else. So that's what I'm looking at now is actually how to become successful. Looks like we're moving off, John, to the conclusion of this. But the quant way and stat way, I do believe in the math way. I want the students to go through that sequence. I want them to become successful in math. I want them to become successful in math all the way through so they can choose the career they want, not let math dictate the career. So now I'm preaching like an apostle.
I think
But that's what I really
one
want.
more question that I would like you to go through. Paige asked, how do you get students to do the study skills assignment without making it a big part of the grade?
Well, first of all, if you're teaching in a classroom or if you're teaching an Emporium model, you have to make them do it right there in front of you. What I'm finding out that most students don't do the study skills because in the past it didn't help. So why should I do something that didn't help? When I actually teach them the test-taking strategies and give them the fake test, or on some of the tests, I tell them my first question is memory data dump. You get 5 points for dumping out stuff. Once they practice it and see it's beneficial, once they are actually in a tutorial system and see it's beneficial, they usually start using it. Now, as far as extra credit, if you can't give it to them, I understand that. That means it's more important. I also have students come in and do testimonials. Especially in the note-taking, I did the note-taking. It showed me what I needed to do, and I did a better grade on the next test. I have people do that all the time. So they actually answer that question page is, you got to show them the skills and what I call fake it sometimes. I actually will give them 5 math problems after they have reviewed their notes in the classroom or in the Emporium model, and also they're saying, well, this is easier. And I go, well, yeah. And it didn't dawn on them that if they just reviewed and used some study strategies, it would work, especially the test anxiety. But I guarantee that note-taking system works. The making up their own test system, and with online tests, the same thing. They practice, they do it, then they see value in it. But you're going to have to kind of help them understand that the value is already there. Okay? There should be another question, too. And that
Yes,
those,
well,
if you send them up, mm-hmm.
I guess we're out of time though, but
Okay.
if you would all like to thank Dr. Nolting in the chat room for the great
Mm-hmm.
presentation today, that would be wonderful. And again, thanks to all of you for participating in today's
Mm-hmm.
AMATIC webinar. And if you'd like to support future AMATIC webinars, please consider becoming a member of AMATIC at bit.ly/join-AMATIC. And please remember to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/AMATIC. And recording of past AMATIC webinars, most of them can be found at bit.ly/amatic-webinars, and we'll try to get this one up in the next 1 to 2 weeks or so. And if you could please take 2 minutes to evaluate the webinar content and the presenter today at bit.ly/amatic24, that would be great. And you can actually click on the link that's on your screen right now, and that will take you directly to it. And if you need an email confirmation of your participation in this webinar, please fill in the optional section at the end of the evaluation. And again, if you could all thank Dr. Nolting in the chat room again, and the files that are the handouts can be downloaded above the chat room area today. There is a box that says files too. You should be able to download those, or you can email me or Dr. Nolting, and one of the two of us will get back to you.
Yeah,
And
I do have one advertisement. You ready?
yes.
The AMATIC conference. You got to come to it. And Thursday, from 9:10 to 11:10, we're having the second National Math Summit with all the experts. They're all going to be there again. This time Hunter Bowen will be there, the Carnegie Foundation, AMATIC, and basically anybody who we have worked with, NAID, MAA, come to that presentation, because if you want to get it from the top people in the country, that's going to be the place, okay? And also, like I said, the developmental part of the AMATIC is helping us and working with us on this. I just appreciate it. I'm almost tearing up a little bit to the fact that you have the ability to help students become successful in math. You give them hope, you show them the skills, teach them how to learn better, good instruction. We'll have more people being successful in math and doing what they need to do. Thank you again, and I'll answer all the questions I can that I get. And have a good day. Think positive. Math means success for students. Thank you again.
Yes, and I'm going to end the recording now, but again, I reiterate Dr. Nolting's sentiment. Have a great day, everyone.